Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with podcast number 168. Today we have a scenario question. I'm actually starting to like the scenario question, so that's kind of a cool thing. Hopefully you guys are too. Remember that we have to continue our marketing through the end of the year so that we prime our January. Our January is always going to be the busiest month. Let me brag about our numbers here, if I may. What do we get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it looks like over the last week we've got 11 contracts. Now I know typically I get the 15 or so in a week, but didn't this last week. And that's just the fact that we're slower here, but the quality calls are better. But I'll take that 10, 11 kind of thing. I think it is 11, yeah. 1 second. Yeah, 11. So not a bad thing. So keep marketing, keep buying deals. If I can buy them in the Christmas season, you can too. Remind me, or hopefully I'll remind myself to announce something at the end of this scenario question. But here, let's go. And remember, if you have a scenario question, send it in to support@bsffacademy.com. One more time, support@bsffacademy.com. Or you can go to our forum over at Buy, Sell, Fix, Flip /forum. And there's an area where you can add the question there too. Makes it a little bit easier for you guys. And here we go. Scenario question. Say I get a house under contract for $70,000. The as-is price is $100,000. The seller agrees to hold a 30-year amortized note in which they receive monthly payments. There's no down payment and no interest, so the seller is receiving $195 per month for 30 years. Given that we are wholetailing, the best case scenario is if I get the property under contract with plenty of time before closing, say 2 to 3 months. If I sell this property, have a buyer lined up before closing with the original seller, does my resell of the property extinguish the note? In other words, do they no longer get their monthly payment, but rather get the lump sum of $70,000 and I get the $100,000 minus closing costs? That said, is exchangeable collateral the only way to ensure the seller keeps receiving monthly payments even after I resell the property? Okay, so we have a house that's worth $100K. We're going to buy it for $70K on a seller 30-year AM. No interest. Okay, and so we have a $30,000 spread. We have a $195 payment apparently. And again, no interest. So, and on the seller carryback, they're assumable loans, okay? So you didn't do a non-assumable due on sell term within your note. I know you didn't, because if you use my contract, it's not in there. And now you want to sell it to an end user. You're selling it for the $100,000. Your note with your seller is for only $70,000. Okay, and so you want to make your $30,000. So let's look at that, because that's really the big question you have for yourself is, how do I get the $30,000 to me without paying off the seller who wants to do an installment sell or seller carryback? Hopefully do a seller carryback and not an installment sell, but let's assume that we did. And so how do we get that $30,000? Well, when we started this process, if we had a seller that said, hey, I want to leave the loan in place. I want it to be there for 30 years. I want to defer my tax consequence. That's all they're doing. They're not saving taxes. They're deferring their tax because they're only going to be taxed on the amount that they collect after the original amounts that they've paid and used to increase the value of the property. When those amounts are paid first, no tax on those because that's the amount they paid. After those have been paid, then they're going to start getting have to pay tax on the amount that they receive. But in this case, 195 times 12 is 2,400 minus 60, so 2,340. And so the tax rate on 2,340 is just not going to be great. So it's a great thing for the seller. Seller doesn't want to extinguish their note. So there's a few ways we can do this. One, we can do an exchangeable collateral. So that means, and that we have to set this up when we purchase the property and orchestrate the note. Okay, so it's exchangeable collateral. That means that we can take the note, the security of the note, what we collateralize to secure the note, and transfer the collateral to another piece of property, the value of which is at our sole discretion. Now, shame on us if we secure the note on a piece of property that's already over encumbered. Perfectly legal to do. Not ethically responsible, okay? It's not right. Morally, ethically not right. So, when we buy the property in the note, we make sure that we have the right to exchange the collateral. And if you're one of my coaching students, you'll notice in the agreement that we use, there's actually a section for terms of the note. And it's an additional term we would have to add into the terms of the note. Pretty simple. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's number one. Exchange it. So where you're continuing to pay it, instead of paying them off, you're going to pay $195 a month for 30 years. Basically, what you have done is you've borrowed $70,000 at 0% interest. You were paid by your buyer $100,000, so you got $100,000, and you're using another piece of property to secure the 70. So that's one way. Second way, okay? You can decide, may not be the best decision, but you can decide to have an uncollateralized note. So it's just a straight note. So you go to sell the property. The seller doesn't want to be paid a 70. You have orchestrated inside of that in the case when you resell orchestrated inside the terms of the note that when you resell the property, that the collateral of the property will no longer collateralize the note and the note will become non-collateralized. And you just start continuing to make your payment. So now you don't have to have a property to put it on. In some cases, that's going to be the case. And you most certainly never want to put it on your personal residence, okay, folks? There is a church and state divided line, a division, and you never want to have church and state. So I look at church and state, meaning my business and what I do personally are two different things. I'm never going to commingle those, and I'm never going to collateralize my personal residence by putting a note against it. So you'll find that in my personal life, a lot of things that I have are paid for. I want the water faucet business. I want to be able to go anywhere. I want to be able to do anything. And I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to ruin that lifestyle. So I'm not going to attach things to my personal holdings. Business holdings are a different thing. My personal holdings I'm talking about. So you can, one, exchange the collateral to another piece of property. And two, you can unsecure the note when you sell your property. But there's a third opportunity that we need to look at. Okay? So let's look at the third opportunity. When you orchestrate the purchase and the note, and you decide the terms you want are going to be, I may have to exchange your collateral. I may have to have this notice, an unsecured or non-collateralized note, unsecured at payoff of property. However, you may decide and you'll want to decide this in advance of your purchase and when you orchestrate the terms of your note, that you want the seller on his $70,000 or her $70,000 seller carryback to be what we call a subordinated deed. So what that means for them is that at some point you're going to roll into the property and place a mortgage or a loan, and it's going to be collateralized by this property, and you want that collateralization, that deed, although recorded subsequently to the original deed, you want that deed that was recorded at a later date to be in primary position or in front of the seller carryback, and that's a subordinated deed. Now, when you do something like that, here's what can happen. Very exciting. So you have a buyer out there who wants to buy your house for $100,000. You have a $70,000 0% 30-year fully amortized note. You have a $30,000 equity position that you may or may not be capable of extracting. So here's the deal. I would go to my buyer and I would say to my buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I have a perfect solution for you. You know how today's interest rates are 3.5%, 4% interest? And they're going to say, yes. Here's what I'm going to do for you. I am going to finance your purchase 10% down at 4.5% interest amortized over 30 years. But you're saying, wait, Mike, I want my $30,000. Well, we're going to get to that in a second. So now what we have, keep in mind, we have a original seller carryback of $70,000 to us at 0% interest. We have a $30,000 or 30% self-interest in the property because that's our equity base. We have a buyer who wants to give us 100% of our equity. We allow them to make us a payment at 4.5% on a $90,000 loan because we're requiring them to give us 10% down. That covers our costs to do all this stuff. 10% down. So we have a $90,000 note at 4.5%. Now, you have to ask yourself at this point, what do we want to do? Do we want to be passive income earners? And hang on, let me check. I'm going to go over here to my loan calculator. Bear with me, this won't take me long. So I have a $90,000 mortgage. And I have a 30-year term. I have 4.5% interest, and I'm going to calculate that. That gives me a payment of $456.02. Okay? Now I have to subtract from that payment the $195 to that my underlying $70,000 loan to the seller. So if I subtract that from that, so now my net to me minus my loan costs is $261.02. So my $30,000 equity is earning me, in putting it together this way, $261.02 a month. So now I have to ask myself if that's what I want. Do I want that? Do I want that? Let's face it. Do I want it? Is that good or bad? I don't know. I'd like to get the $30,000, but this is a great way to get it for time. But maybe I want to do this, but I also want the security that if I ever need the $30,000 that I can sell my note. It's 4.5% interest, not a bad performing note. But it's 4.5% interest on $70,000 does not have an interest rate attached to it. So there's note providers out there note buyers out there that'll give you money for that note. They'll give you your 30 grand. That's a home run for them, what you just did. Man, and you sold it to someone who doesn't have to qualify for a mortgage. Imagine that. 10,000 or the 10% that they gave you will cover your costs. You're not going to have a real estate agent involved in this. So your costs are only going to be 2.25%. So you're going to have 7.75% left over up front. Now you may want to do some stuff like add some value to the resale value. So for the right to have this low interest, you may want to charge them some points, which you're more than legally can do. But even at the straight end of the day, let's assume for a second you take this over let's just call it a 24-month period, okay? So I'm going to take this to January 2018. The loan balance that started at $90,000. It started at $90,000. It is now down to $86,899.84. So you made 16,001, and you've made $3,100 in reduced principal. So you've made $3,116 of reduced principal. But over that period of time, 26,102 times 24. Let me get my smartphone out because it's much more smart than I am. I used to be able to do this when I was a kid, folks. I could multiply 4-digit numbers like I was Rain Man, but it's not happening anymore. So I'll get my calculator out. 261.02 times 24. So during that process, that period, you've made $3,164 on your note. You still have your $20,000 in equity. Actually, you don't. You have like 17 now. You received your 10% equity on your purchase, and then you had 2.25% cost there. So you have about $7,700 there. So instantly over the first 2 years, you've made your $7,700. You've made your $3,100 in this case, in the difference between principal and interest. So that's 11 grand. And you still have a note that's performing. So if we take this all the way out, folks, let's take this all the way out to like 5 years. So that would be January of 21. Let's go here to 5 years. In 5 years, that note, the principal balance is only moved to $81,893. Let me do my calculations here. So I've got 261. So over a 60-month period, you've earned $7,654 in interest. Keep in mind, you still earn that $7,700 on the down payment. Keep in mind, you still have a performing note that you're making money on every month. Crazy. Crazy, 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 crazy. Okay? And you still have the ability to sell your note, because even at 60 months, your face value of your note, you still have $11,445 there. But if you take this thing, now let's look at it. I mean, this is passive note buying, basically, or note configuration. If you take this thing all the way, through 10 years, goodness gracious, what would 10 years be? That would be 2026. So, man, you're talking about some huge money here, people. So, now that's the third way you can do it. Third way. Now, let's assume for a second you go, Mike, I don't want to be a passive note owner. I don't want to do passive income. I want to make that $30,000 now. Okay. How hard would you think it would be to sell that note that you have? Now, keep in mind, you've bought a property for $70,000. It's worth $100,000. You found your buyer, and the $70,000 is zero interest, 30-year AM note. You found your buyer wants to give you $100,000, 10% down, 4.5% interest, 30-year AM. What you want to do is you want to pull out all of your $30,000. Okay? That's what you want. Not going to have a hard time finding someone to step in and say, yeah, I'll give you your $30,000. You may find that the seller that you bought it from originally, you could go back to them and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, depends on how well you know them and how financially stable they are. You go back to Mr. and Mrs. Seller and say, hey, let's do this. I can orchestrate you a monthly payment of, and with interest on $100,000 if you can bring to the closing $30,000 or $20,000. Do you have $20,000 you can bring to the closing? You never know. You're going to make his day because you're going to turn his zero interest loan into a 4.5% loan on $90,000. And that seems like a good day for them. Maybe they don't have the money, but someone has the money. Someone has the $20,000. You know, if someone has $20,000 sitting in the bank, I can guarantee you $20,000 is not on the first month. I can guarantee you that $20,000 is not earning $337.50 in interest the first month. I can guarantee it. So, put the deal together. Great scenario question. Hope I didn't lose anybody. Talk to you guys soon. Oh, got to talk about something exciting happening over at Yellow Letters. You know, we're always trying to do things like outside the box. And this one's a little bit outside the box for us, or a lot outside the box. Get this, guys and gals. If you do any direct mail, we have a platinum membership program now that when you're in the platinum membership program, you get 15% off on all of your mail. What that equates to us for you is that is our best price we've ever offered it at on sale. So you basically get sales prices throughout the year. Throughout 2016, if you're a platinum member, you get to order at 15% off, which is the highest sale offer we've had. 15% off for being a platinum member. It is absolutely insanely good, and you should take advantage of it because, my goodness, that's a great savings. I mean, it's like it converts some of this price of this stuff down to just hardly anything. And anytime you can save 15%, and anytime you order, you don't have to order in bulk. You just order anything you want to order, whether it's 300 letters or 1,000 letters or 10,000 letters. You still get whatever it costs, 15% off as a platinum member. We've got to do that. So talk to them over there if you're interested in that. Find out what that's all about. But it's an outstanding program. We'll talk soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.